Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cube Pod, episode 109. Dave Vellante, John Furrier,
Johnny Furrier, what's happening, brother?
Dave with the salute.
Good to see you.
I'm at the
Looking
NYSE.
good at the
Dog
NYSE.
days of summer here at the
Yes.
NYSE. Quite the media place this week. I just saw the CEO of Next Hop. He came in and Shul with his wife and two kids. Former executive leader at Arista. The Arista stock price is up on one of the market makers. I got a picture of that. So big day here. What a great week it's been. I can't wait to get in and talk to you about Intel because Trump going after Intel CEO like he did Andy Jassy, but don't go there yet because I know you're dying to go there. We have to talk about the OpenAI news because a bunch of stuff happened with OpenAI. The briefing with NVIDIA that you did, we did as a team. You got a post out on it. OpenAI is going horizontal on a major ecosystem expansion with AWS hosting OpenAI for the first time, and they got it up and running in day one at launch. So did Cerebras, and so did a bunch of other companies. And huge news. Anthropic's got new models out. Google's got new models out. The frontier is being pushed by the frontier models. And it's amazing. And of course, you wrote the post last week around JP Morgan Chase and Jamie Dimon and Sam Altman. But Sam Altman's team is absolutely making a big strategic move. I'm hearing rumblings of an IPO within the year, $1 trillion valuation. VC's expecting 3x their money on $350 million round they just did early on. So it's just like OpenAI is just crushing it. But what was fascinating, Dave, was the fact that OpenAI has all these new relationships. They're making an ecosystem play. NVIDIA played it up like they were the only ones on the dance floor. No way. A lot of other people were on the dance floor. You got AWS. Okay. I had to go back to the archives because in 2023, I asked Matt Garman directly, hey, Matt, would you let Sam Altman get all your customers? And he didn't skip a beat. And this is before he was CEO. He said, absolutely, I would. And then
I remember that.
Vintage Matt Garman commentary there. Went to the archives with our AI cloud, got that clip, posted on LinkedIn, went super viral. Everyone in Amazon's just talking about it. I'm getting chirps from the community around that deal, and this is a huge deal because it's the open source license. So, Dave, I mean, there's a story hiding in plain sight that no one's talking about, which is
and Satya is raiding Google, trying to steal people from DeepMind so he can build his own model, right? And then Elon says that OpenAI will crush Microsoft, and I'm like, wait a minute, Elon, I thought you said OpenAI sucks. Which is it?
Well, you got the windsurf, you got all this talent acquisition. It's a war right now, and I think the signaling that I'm reading between the tea leaves is OpenAI is losing the relationship. There's a breakup coming with Microsoft. It's clearly decoupling going on. So no question about that. So, but the other thing that's no one's talking about that's hiding in plain sight was the fact that if you're an open source model, if you remember, Llama pioneered this with Meta, and it's in the terms of service. You could use it for free, but if you're a big company, you got to have an agreement. Okay, I got to read the terms of service, but let me just tell you this. There's no discussion on Amazon Web Services around them having some sort of license problem or issue or compliance narrative. I think they did this deal as a biz dev deal. Someone actually did this deal at AWS. This is a dev deal, no question about it.
So you're right. I wrote about this. I was on the NVIDIA analyst call, and so the big question is what's OpenAI's commitment to open source, and it's not only open source, it's open weights. And to me, that's the more interesting piece of this, because if it's open weights, then enterprises can customize it for their own needs. But it's a GPT-3 class model. So it's now 2 generations behind the state of the art, because today GPT-5 came out. I don't know if you've been playing around with GPT-5 at all.
I have been all last night.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah, it came out last night, not today, but today it's got all the headlines. I mean, what do you think? What do you think of GPT-5?
It's pretty impressive.
It's pretty good.
I did all my standard queries, stuff I'm working on. How would you explain SiliconANGLE Media to an analyst relations department? you know, what
Yeah.
it's the
All the
superpower.
stuff that confuses people. What have you noticed the strike
Completely
throughs?
work. I'm like, damn, I'm cutting and paste. I send it to you.
Have
Um,
you noticed the strike throughs? It does strike throughs now. And I said to it, is that you correcting hallucinations? It said, no, no. It's just, us correcting ourselves. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, back to the sort of open AI situation, right? I mean, they're very clearly there is a move towards separation. Sam Altman was on CNBC today saying, "Yeah, we're making progress. It's good, positive conversations. Oh, I'll bet they're real positive.
a real
This is
positive
going to
for
make
him.
like John. This is going to make like the spyglass browser moves look like kiddie sports comparatively."
Yeah, and for the folks that are young and don't know what spyglass moves are, that was the browser that Microsoft OEM before they built Internet Explorer 3, which was essentially the monopoly that brought down with the DOJ, almost a breakup of Microsoft, but I argue set them back generations in innovation. But yeah, they monopolized the browser and killed Netscape with monopolized power. So Microsoft, I mean, the question for you, Dave, who's Spyglass? OpenAI
Yeah,
or
right.
who's Netscape here? It's not OpenAI. I can tell you that. Maybe Microsoft. I don't know who's Spyglass. Is Microsoft using OpenAI as their Spyglass, and then they're
Well,
engineering their own?
I
And
just I just I
and is
wrote about
OpenAI
this
Netscape?
after Microsoft announced its earnings, which were very impressive, and I wrote about it again then, and I wrote about it again today. The impressive growth in Microsoft Azure, they say now 75 billion and 39% constant currency growth. But a lot of that growth, John, is coming from ChatGPT inference. So I love the comment George Gilbert made to me privately. He said Microsoft doesn't want everybody to know they got a ChatGPT tiger by the tail, and that's what's powering a lot of the Azure. But their margins keep getting depressed because of that. So it seems to me they are just going to bogart what they've learned and try to develop their own, which I don't know. I mean, they're behind on foundation models. Do they really want to dive into that game? I mean, they've been winning with OpenAI, but OpenAI seems like it wants to spread its wings a little bit, wants to flee the coop.
OpenAI clearly is playing an ecosystem play because if you look at the narratives, I've been squinting through all the LinkedIn comments from people who work at OpenAI, people who partner with OpenAI. And if you look at the joint releases that went out and all the different briefings that went out to all the analysts and what we got briefed on, it is absolutely a go-to-market ecosystem move by OpenAI. They are clearly going horizontal in the execution. That is a direct counter to a relationship with Microsoft. That is a decoupling hedge or intentional plan to expand the base. Nvidia is doing the same thing for in their world. They got the supply chain on the hardware side, which we know, and obviously the moat with the software. But their entire bet is go to market on the ecosystem. Now, that's our ecosystem, Dave. We've been covering this enterprise ecosystem in the cloud since the founding of SiliconANGLE Media and the Cube Research, going back 16 years. So, you know, these moves are being made in our territory. This is our.
Hey, John.
These are
Hey,
our
John. If
streets.
you if it costs you $6 billion to train GPT-5 and GPT-6 is going to be 10 billion and GPT-7 could be north of 30, 40, 50 billion, you better have an ecosystem play. I mean, and so,
Well,
there's
developers are the ecosystem because coding and accuracy are the features of ChatGPT 5. But now the open source, that is a direct seeding the base of developers. And you and I both have been covering like a blanket the enterprise AI market. So we know kind of what's going on there. We're calling the balls and strikes. And we know that it's in I won't say a thawing phase, but it was frozen from a production standpoint for many, many months and over years. Now it's opening up. And with the IPO window opening up, there's spend out there right now that's committed through 2026. I talked to many founders and it ain't slowing down. So this bubble is going and it's got revenue. So I think you're going to start to see some of the IPOs that come out in the next, I'd say 6 to 8 months will tell us where the sequence of revenue will drop first. Obviously the neo clouds, we're seeing them. You're starting to see some crypto, a little bit off the AI rails, a little bit, but also tied in. But when you start seeing data-driven platforms, transformative companies that are using data as enterprise as their customer base, then it's game on for full blown
so you
monetization.
mentioned OpenAI potential IPO. Let's talk about that. So if it really is costing that much, which it is, to train these models, and the real value in the model isn't the underlying model itself, because you can't maintain competitive advantage. You saw how fast DeepSeek responded to
Mhm.
OpenAI and ChatGPT. So GPT-5 is out. How long is it going to take before Anthropic and DeepSeek and other open and Llama and other open source models catch up and Grok? And so it's not the underlying model; it's the agent on top of that model. And that's what Chat GPT 5 actually brings to the table. So my
The
question is,
strategy makes sense.
do, do they want to, can they do this as a public company? Can they frankly, burn all this cash as a public company? They might just want to stay private if they can raise the dough.
Well, no, I think they can go public, and I think that's a good move for them. First of all, one, you're right about the agents of building on top of ChatGPT. Hence, the strategy and the genius of going horizontal makes total sense. I would do that if I was in the war room. Yes, decouple from Microsoft. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Go horizontal. Lock in with NVIDIA. Good call there. Can't go wrong there. And then you got to get the developers that are building stuff for, say, Tesla robotics. All the computer vision stuff coming out is going to hit robots. All these new use cases, life sciences, every vertical is going to have AI. We'll have agents. So you want to get those developers now up and running with the open source model, notwithstanding the Amazon having a business deal with them. But you're going to start to see OpenAI nurture that market. It's a first wave of strategy move. You got to do that. And then on the IPO, if they go public, and I heard rumors, okay, talking to sources this week that the OpenAI wants to go public at over $1 trillion valuation. Their contemplated round they're talking about now is 500 billion. Okay, that is the number. Let me so look at the actual number I heard. I think Rob was
Well, if
talking.
their valuation is 500 billion, they'll easily, if they do an IPO in the next year, and
So
the
if
market stays like this, they'll do billion
I
dollar
heard that
valuation.
the VCs, a lot of institutional guys are coming in now. That's definitely been reported. I got that scoop. That's may or may not be new information, but if it is, then here it is. A lot of institutions came in on that last round. I said, are they VCs selling early into the round, taking it off the table to lock in their IRRs on their funds and then play with house money going forward? That's the standard VC move. Well, I was told today from someone in Silicon Valley that the VCs that invested at the $350 million valuation are expecting triple returns on that. Okay, they're holding. So if they go public, one, they want the returns. Number two, can you imagine the investor fever of OpenAI stock going public? Everyone and their mother's going to buy because that's going to be a massive surge in value. The leverage on the operations that they get with that debt, I mean that currency on the M&A front will be massive, and it's going to be a frothy retail market. Who wouldn't buy it? And I think that'll be a smashing IPO if they go public. I mean, hell, Figma went public and went crazy. Can you imagine if OpenAI went public?
No, as I said, if they're
It
at a
would be
half a billion
incredible.
dollar, if they're at a $500 billion valuation
And
now,
I think
they
with
go
with the demand,
they go
you'd see
public within the
financials.
next, and they go public within the next year, and this market stays this way, they'll easily have $1 trillion
The global
valuation.
financial markets would open up the wallets. There'd be instruments created for this. There will be a money raising tsunami for OpenAI if they go public, in my opinion. So I think staying private for them, I wouldn't. I'd go public with the
Well, I hope they do. Of course,
yeah,
we always like to see it, but
yeah.
they are bleeding cash. I just wanted to frame it too. I mean, this is the first agent era was consumer agent, and now OpenAI has taken that to a new level with GPT-5. Sort of the second era was really software engineering and coding, and that's what Anthropic and Cursor brought to the table. And now, as you rightly pointed out, ChatGPT version 5 is encroaching on that software engineering. Allman even said, "Well, we knew we had to do better in coding." Well, evidently, it's really good at coding. So now they're firmly entrenched in the first era. They're the leader in the consumer agent. They're going after the software engineering agent, and then the third era, which is emerging, is the enterprise agent, which is, I think, going to be a lot harder to attack because of the data strategy. You've got to have, as we pointed out last week, a digital twin of the enterprise, and nobody's talking about the data. Everybody's talking about the algorithms and the underlying LLMs. but you've got to have a data model, and that data model has to have the ability to encapsulate people, places, things, and activities, i.e., processes, in a 4D map. And not a lot of people are working on that. Salonis is obviously working at. Palantir is crushing it with that architecture, and I think obviously others, ServiceNow, Salesforce, we've talked about, but they're few and far between. But that is the holy grail of enterprise AGI, and I think it'll take a little longer to develop, but I think you're right. OpenAI is a horizontal play, and it wants to play in all three. With open weights, it just extends its TAM dramatically.
Yeah. I mean, I love the post you guys did on the three waves chatbot
Yes.
for the consumer agents. That's what we see now.
Credit to George Gilbert on that one.
The code era, which is we're seeing coding agents, that's happening. And now the third wave is enterprise agents. And I think that is just, the smaller waves are hitting now, but that's, coming, right? I mean,
I agree. Yep, absolutely. Don't totally agree. And George did some really good work on that.
This is where the data environments. There's still some work to do. I was watching a great podcast today with Goldman Sachs's head of technology and Mike Speiser, and he was talking about his days when he started Snowflake, and before that, remember Pure Storage. Now, what people might not know is that Mike Speiser is a legend, entrepreneur, thinker, investor, VC, but he works for a VC firm, but he's more of an incubator product builder, and he essentially created two franchises that have both escaped velocity, both gone public: Pure Storage and Snowflake. Founding CEO, put the teams together. This podcast, search Mike Speiser, Goldman Sachs. It's a great video. He goes into great detail around the methodology of that. And he said NAND flash, he saw as a disruptive enablement, hence storage and databases would be impacted. And based upon that, he built those two big businesses. Why am I bringing this up? Why does this matter? It matters because, like you're pointing out, what OpenAI is doing with these moves and what AI is providing as an industry is it's such a disruptor, except it's not just NAND flash, in that case, storage and database, only two kind of major areas that can be blown up at the big companies. This could level those three waves, could create categorical dozen companies, Dave, dozens of companies. So, to me, this is why OpenAI, I think, will continue to thunder away, because getting away from Microsoft is like literally a good move, because if they're the Netscape, they're executing well. Netscape didn't do it. They went into the enterprise and got crushed by Microsoft monopoly power. They didn't see it coming. They were arrogant. I don't think OpenAI is arrogant. I think they're much more, let's just keep pounding the pavement. And that's that playbook right now. Play what's in front of you. Skate with the puck. Don't skate to where the puck is going. Skate with the puck. And that's what they're doing. OpenAI is skating with the puck while everyone else is trying to skate to where the puck is going to go. But guess what? They control the puck. So that's the deal. And
they're Gretzky.
if you're in this business and you're not skating with the puck,
they're more Bobby Orr. Skating with the puck.
Just skate around everybody. You don't need to know who the puck is. And if you got a friend, pass it to it. Now they got NVIDIA, they got AWS. I think the AWS deal with OpenAI is a huge deal. Okay. And they had to go Anthropic, but that is, I don't know who's blinking on that one, Microsoft or OpenAI, but OpenAI gets massive lift with AWS. They're going to get thousands of customers, and Amazon gets another selection choice, which is Amazon's DNA. So, Amazon's loving life right now. So I thought that was news yesterday that I think was important. And I think the OpenAI Llama model terms of service and license agreement, I'm going to go look at the OpenAI Amazon. If there's none of that in there, then this was a biz dev deal, which means that there was some relationships going on that reinforces the decoupling with Microsoft. It also shows that Amazon has a business deal with OpenAI. That's historic, okay? Because they were at odds because of the Azure AWS play. So, I mean, and Google's got Gemini. So now
Gemini's looking good.
What do they do?
Bro, use Gemini. Gemini's good.
They're all good right now. I mean, Anthropic's good. ChatGPT is good. Gemini's good. They all got kind of different flavors and twists. Gemini does a little bit more research better, but they all, I test them all with the same prompts, and he just comes up with different stuff, but it's still all good. Again, this is just the beginning. I think it's massive. But hey, hats off to OpenAI. I got to ask you about Intel. I saw your tweets this morning. You saw that Trump went after the CEO.
Yeah,
Um,
there's two stories here. Did you
what's the
see the
story?
article? Did you see the article that Reid Hoffman and a couple other board members wrote? Did you see that?
The Fortune one?
Yeah, the Fortune one.
No, I saw it. I didn't read it. Tell me
So
what it
it
was.
was Charlene Barshevsky, who was like the former government U.S. trade representative, and then Scott Farrell, and then Reid Hoffman and James Plummer. So Charlene, former U.S. trade rep, Reid Hunt, everybody knows who that is, chairman of the FCC, et cetera. Plummer is former dean of engineering at Stanford. David Yoffie is professor at Harvard Business School. And so they came out with this article, America's champion is likely to retreat and we still need a leading edge chip manufacturer. Yeah, no shit. It's August 6th, 2025, this came out. And these are former board members. So they basically laid out a plan. You're going to love this. It said, here's the plan. First, similar to the first, Operation Warp Speed. The Trump administration should build a public-private partnership where future customers, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, Broadcom, Google, Amazon, Apple, and others, and Japanese investors such as SoftBank and private equity backed by government financing or investment would buy Intel's fab assets before the lack of investment and the rust of time makes them worthless. Okay, so this is, you might remember, last year, Furrier and I put out a bold plan to save Intel's foundry, and it was all about spinning it out. So when we floated that plan, backdoor to the Intel board, to some of the folks in M&A that I trust, what we realized is a couple of things. One is the cap table was too complicated, so we needed to simplify it. Two, it was critical that we get TSM IP in there, because without TSM IP, it's going to be 20 years before you could even, compete and catch up. So the problem with their scenario, I like it generally the direction, but the problem in their logic is Operation Warp Speed might work for vaccines, but it doesn't work for silicon. And the second, as I said, the cap table is too complicated. The third is it completely leaves TSM out of the picture. And so my tweet storm was all about, hey, rather what you should do is narrow down the cap table to the TSM, the US government, US taxpayers with the CHIPS Act money, dust that off. And that's a good investment. And then you got to basically, I'll say it this way, entice the likes of Apple, NVIDIA, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Broadcom, entice them, AKA strong arm them, President Trump, into putting cash into the deal in exchange for volume, guaranteed commitments. So if they each put in $5 billion, which is a drop in the bucket, you just saw Tim Cook at the White House, what was it, yesterday, with the gold bar, and the glass. He was saying adding 100 billion, take 5 billion out of that, put it to this deal, and commit wafer volume. Take it. You have to take the wafers and the chips, even if they don't pass, your yield quality. You just got to take it. You keep them off the cap table, but you keep them involved. You take their cash and you take their commitment, and you give them, guaranteed supply over time. And the cap table is the U.S. government, TSM, U.S. taxpayers, TSM. Maybe throw Intel a little bone, and then the private equity. The other flaw in their analysis is before the lack of investment and the rust of time makes them worthless. I got news for you. Intel's fabs are already worthless. They are negative value, just like IBM's microelectronics was when they paid global foundries to take it. So the point is, this is long overdue. I like the direction. It's like too late, Powell. They're a little too late, and they kind of missed the real opportunity, which is you have to bring TSM in here. Why? If you bring TSM, one, you get IP. Two, you get skills. Three, TSM is incented as a hedge against Taiwan, so that brings them to the table, and it gives us the hedge against China invading Taiwan. And so, yes, it does give TSM control, but it also gives U.S. control as well. U.S. would be the majority shareholder in the cap table. That, to me, is a more viable plan. Now, maybe they went down to that direction. They read our scenario. Maybe TSM didn't want to do it, but Trump has the capability to entice people to do stuff. And so that's sort of what I wanted to share. Now, the other piece of this is Trump calling for Lip Bhutan to step down, which is unbelievable in a tweet, in a Truth Social post. Like, that is fairly unprecedented, where you're calling for a CEO to step down without really first asking questions. I mean, what did you think of that?
I thought it was terrible. It reminded me of when he went after Jeff Bezos on the Jedi contract.
Yeah.
Fully politically motivated, some sort of weird. Uh, I have no idea why he would do that. He's well regarded in the Valley. He's regarded as someone who probably could turn around Intel if he wanted to. But Trump got, butthurt about his Chinese relationships. He's been an American citizen for 40 years. He loves this country. What he said, you got to take him for his word. And he's leading Intel, and he got a lot of eyes on Intel. It's not like, what is he going to do?
Well, so
that could be a competitive strategy with the United States. Bring Intel to China. You figure it out.
My sources tell me there's a rift in the board. Certain board members want to spin up Foundry because, frankly, they have a brain. And my understanding is Lip Bhutan wants to hold on to Foundry. Not that he doesn't have a brain, but I think it's a mistake. You cannot will Foundry to catch up and be competitive to TSM. It's like, I must have said that. How many times have I said Wright's Law on this podcast? I swear to God, Furrier and I and Kathy Wright are the only three people on the planet who care about Wright's Law. Her whole premise in her research methodology, she said this publicly, is based on Wright's Law, which again says that as you double your cumulative volume, your manufacturing costs go down. Well, Intel is in a position, because their volume comes from PCs and PCs are flat to down. Intel is in a position where they cannot double their cumulative volume. Meanwhile, ARM-based processors are doubling volume, every, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years, 1 year. I don't know exactly, but they're clearly on that curve. As a result, their lead keeps getting greater and greater and greater. TSM, their costs relative to Intel's keep going down and down and down. So Intel risks is in the obvious risk is, forget 18A. 14A, in my opinion, is too risky. They'll never hit their targets on that. And TSM, bringing TSM in allows them to bridge to 14A. It brings a U.S. Domiciled company, i.e. the joint venture. Oh, by the way, their name for this was the American Foundry. Now, that's an obvious name, but that's the name we gave it a year ago. So
they're reading your stuff. That's good.
Yeah, so it is good. And I know this got floated to the Intel board, so I know they saw it. But nonetheless, you have to have TSM, in my opinion, involved in this. And it makes so much sense. And I think, given the great work that David Sachs is doing and the influence that Trump is having in tech and geopolitics, it's sitting there waiting for this deal to get done. And they should dust off the CHIPS Act money and make it happen. And then the United States taxpayers would own the majority of American Foundry. And then, again, hedge against China invading Taiwan. It just makes so much sense.
Totally makes a lot of sense. It's just a no-brainer. I mean, it's a deal that's not complicated to do. Yeah, there's some shit that's got to get done, but for the most part, it's good. You mentioned Apple, right? They're tons of $1 billion. A lot is talked about Apple sucking up to Trump, but if you look at that deal, what they're doing is probably removing money around just to make Trump feel like he's got to win. But I think if you look at it, yeah, there's going to be some plants in the United States. They're building the glass for the iPhone. That's it. They're going to ship that to China. Here's your glass for the iPhone, iPad. It's not like, I mean, the news channels watching Fox News and they're like, oh, it's a great victory. It's the freaking glass. Okay, that's specialized. They'll tool it up, build a good fab, make high skilled labor. Great, good for America. But that's not like a huge win. I mean, it's a win. It's not a grand slam. Grand slam would have been iPhones in America, but everyone knows they can't do that right now for the reasons that you mentioned about the foundry stuff and all the requirements to build the chips. So, it is a win. I give them that. However, it's an easy give by Apple. I mean,
yeah, they're not dumbasses.
I mean, like,
he just had to go
everyone knows Tim Cook hates Trump. I mean, Tim Cook hates Trump.
He just had to go eat crow, in the White House.
No,
But he's doing the right thing
no,
for his company.
he's paying the freight. Don't look at me.
Yeah,
Tariff relief.
yeah,
Here's your win.
right.
Here's your talking points. There's
Yep.
one tweet that said, "Here's the talking points."
Well, we'll
Here's,
see how this all shakes out. I mean, U.S. manufacturing sector since January has been basically down. Jobs are not growing in that sector. Now it's early. I wouldn't. I'm not one of these people that says, "See, Trump's wrong." Let's see how this plays out. But right so far, the headlines are, 100 billion here, 500 billion there, bringing jobs back to America, manufacturing boom. You know, we were a loser country. Now we're the winningest country on the world. It's great marketing, great
well,
narrative,
I'll
but
tell you,
let's see if the numbers bear that out over the next 3 years.
you brought up David Sachs, and you mentioned some of the things that are perfectly lined up for the American foundry play that you laid out that they're kind of fumbling. By the way, anyone listening that knows what Intel, tell them to go look at that again. But Dave's thing had it right. But you brought up the David Sachs and the Trump, and the thing that no one's talking about is the Genius Act is genius. Okay, it really is making this market on the crypto side monstrous. All more IPOs are coming in on crypto, but the Genius Act basically established really the regulatory framework for stablecoins, for payments. So this is going to be a huge indicator. If this continues, that's going to change the financial systems. So, in June, it got passed by the House and Senate, I think the month later. This is huge. This is going to bring in Fidelity. It's going to bring in all the top people. You can now back stable coins with payments. Okay. So all the deposit institutions, federal agencies, no, the regulatory antiquated system has been the bottleneck in crypto. So Genius Act is one, the AI stuff that they're doing. These are policy things that they're grinding out, and people don't appreciate this. And again, back to Sachs and the team, they're doing the work. I mean, they're laying down the frameworks that need to get done for the regulatory, because nothing gets done without some oversight. You can't manage what you don't understand. So, you know, the Trump administration, you can complain about Trump all you want, but it's making the markets go right now.
Yeah, and then you got the Clarity Act right behind it. Explain that one. Right, you talked to Tom Lee about this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with the Clarity Act?
Yeah, you got the Clarity Act coming right behind it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, the stable coins is really super critical because that means you can actually do that, right? So the digital assets on chain, that's the Clarity Act. It's essentially the official name. I think it's called Digital Asset Clarity or whatever. That was in May, right? So it passed the House in July. Um, it's basically like putting future commodity trading and SEC together, right? It basically puts regulation to unbox the problems around digital assets on blockchain. So real world assets are moving to digital assets. That's happening. That's happening a lot, and you're seeing a lot in the market. The
So,
problem is that you can't manage it. So from an accounting perspective, this came up in my Tom Lee interview. By the way, he was on CNBC today. I saw him down there getting ready. I have to watch the interview, but he brought it up. Other people brought it up. And the problem is this: do you declare the asset as an intangible asset? No one knows. Nobody knows what
yeah.
this is.
So,
So it could matter, right? I mean, Elon Musk is putting all his real world assets, all digital assets, as intangible assets, which gives it a different classification.
so,
The accounting standards, the regulatory clearance, and all the banks. How do you manage the payments, stable coins, and real world assets when this
so
transaction?
let's explain this. Let's explain this because the Genius Act passed. It's law, right? It standardizes stablecoin, rules and regulations across any stablecoin issuer. So, the key with the Genius Act, as you and Tom Lee talked about, is it really puts the focus on reserves and transparency for those reserves, and it
Yeah.
simplifies interoperability. Right. So that's the Genius Act.
And it also enables institutional adoption, right? That's the money
Whoa, whoa,
system.
whoa, whoa, whoa! That's the Clarity Act.
No,
So the Clarity Act passed
no,
legislation.
no, no. That's also stablecoin. No, Clarity Act is different.
No, Clarity Act passed committee, but it hasn't been
No,
put into law yet. And
I'm
has
talking about the broader implications of the Clarity Act, legislation of legitimizing stablecoins, which you were just talking about. Yeah, transparency is boosted and trust. But the financial institutions that are going to leverage what you can use stablecoins to peg value transfer to, that's going to basically boost the institutional adoption of stablecoins, hence transactions. The real world, the other act, the Clarity Act you mentioned, is different. That's
Yes, the Clarity Act gives legal routes for banks and fintechs to issue stable coins, which is huge
yeah,
because now that means traditional institutions are going to get in on the act, like JPMC, who threw cold water on the whole thing and then flip flop, right? So that's going to take crypto
yeah.
to the moon, as they say.
I mean, they're complementary bills, right? So
Yes,
basically, think commodity
but the
trading.
Clarity Act hasn't passed yet. It passed committee with bipartisan support, but it hasn't been put into law yet. It will be.
Yeah, digital assets could be anything. Stable coins have a specific purpose, right? So it's like a dollar, right? You peg it to the dollar, you peg it to stable coins. It allows for some transparency in the financial systems, and the institutions now can have regulators regulate their stuff, and hence these two frameworks are very complementary. So, it just moves the U.S. to a clear regulation, which is opening up the pent up demand for uh, startup opportunities and people that were already in high growth mode. So, you know, compliance obligations are going to increase. Okay, but you get more cash coming in because it's digital assets. I mean, we all have bank accounts with our phones. We look at the bank balance. It's basically a number on an app. And that's a digital representation of the asset. Where's the dollar bills? They're not stacked up in some bank. There's no Fort Knox, right? So it's like it's like technically it's money, but it's dollars. So
But to your
yeah,
point, so the Genius Act is all about the regulating the payment of regulating stablecoin, the payment mechanism of stablecoins. The Clarity Act, to your point, goes beyond that and has a market structure for digital assets that are not necessarily stablecoins, cryptocurrency,
it complements the
tokens. If they're complementary, so
it's
the act is really trying to clarify the distinction, the regulatory and supervisory role, all the stuff that was confusing in the last administration. Um, Things that were, it could be commodities, you could be securities, or some other regulatory category, and it's providing clarity for what that is. So they are complementary, which means once it's passed, that's like the rails have no friction. Go. Now, there are concerns about, lack of regulation. Okay, we'll see how that all plays out.
not to get in the weeds, but the big thing about the Clarity Act is that it introduces the term digital commodity, which is an asset inherently tied to the blockchain for regulatory purposes. Now, the agency that most people think about, and we knew this when we were doing the CUBE coin in 2018, is that the SEC has been going after a lot of these crypto companies because they've been trading coins as securities, like stocks. You have so if a digital commodity is not a stock, so you have another agency called the Commodity Future Trading Commission, CFTC. That's called. These are acronyms. But one agency is for commodity futures trading pork bellies and frozen concentrated orange juice, and one is the SEC for the Securities and Exchange Commission. This bill kind of clarifies the roles and distinguishes the responsibilities of each of those oversight bodies to manage the digital commodity of assets. Now, assets aren't just commodity. The stable coin that's why the Genius Act is separate, is about the stable coin as the digital dollar. And it should be stable and be pegged against all these plumbing systems that are out there, from my word, like a better word. So this actually just kicks off the ability for these oversight bodies, what we're going to call them, to manage what's an investment, what's commodity, what's an asset, and all kinds of shit that they do around, managing it, exemptions, rules, compliance, commodity brokers, exchange dealers, and the people that were involved in dealing with the old system kind of get new roles. So it's a super in the weeds detail, but this is kind of the chasm that's crossed right now. So if this chasm crosses well, I predict you'll see more Circle IPOs. I mean, here at the NYSE, the Circle IPO was a massive watershed moment, right? So And since then, I've seen in the building here many crypto's founders in here. I recognize them. And Tom Lee he's already got Ethereum. He's stockpiling those. He's going to be the micro strategies of Ethereum, and it's a great platform. You put a post on it today on the stock. It's got a great buying opportunity, in my opinion, because if it becomes like Bitcoin but programmable, it's going to rise like Bitcoin. So to me, these kinds of regulatory kind of like grunt work that's got to get grinded out, it's got to get done. Otherwise, there's no accounting. There's no system for it. How do you manage the financial stuff, the plumbing? But the accounting piece is huge. I mean, you can just reclassify something as an intangible asset. What's a digital asset? No, if no one knows what it is and knows how to regulate it, it's going to get arbitrage and it's going to get manipulated. Like it's going to go crazy. So, these are all good things. I mean, I'm very high on this direction. I think that's directly related coming out of Trump's administration. And that's why crypto's hot, because the regime that's in power, Sachs in particular, and the people that he's working with, he's bringing in, are all industry people. I know multiple people that are friends of a friend or friends on Twitter or on social that I've been, having a digital chats with over the years. They're there, ex Uber guys, these are real people that know what they're talking about in business, not just lawyers. So I like the vibe right now that real people are coming into the government to help. Like
So so it's interesting.
modern era.
You saw my tweet on Ethereum today.
Yeah.
I said it's hitting, kind of a resistance level, because in previous cycles, Ether would track Bitcoin, and it hasn't in this last cycle. It hasn't gone back up to its 4,600. It hasn't gone through its 4,600 level. Meanwhile, Bitcoin has blown through 100K, way past its previous levels. And I tweeted today that it's sort of bumping up against resistance, but it's now over 4,000. And
I think
if it stays there, it'll really take off. And Tom Lee, the interview with Tom Lee really underscored this. He basically said, anybody who watched that interview, if they were smart, they probably went out and bought ETH, because he kind of laid out the case. And
I mean,
Ethereum is what backs all these stable coins.
Well, we're going to have next week. You're coming in for it. We're going to do the crypto trailblazers again, backed by popular demand at the NYSE Wired program. Brian Bauman has got a great lineup, great community developing around this. We got our community merged in with that. So the NYSE Wired, again, through pure demand. I'd say the crypto trailblazers and the robotics AI and AI infrastructure are the three hottest NYSE Wired categories right now. Okay. Of course, theCUBE, we have a little bit more expansion on the databases and cloud, but in terms of like companies that are really the next IPOs, they're coming from those areas. And then you're going to start to see apps. There's a couple apps I met in the Paris Raise conference with Brian that are essentially over 10 years old, 5 to 10 years old. That seems to be the age of a company that has saw the AI coming and they've already integrated it in. They're kicking ass. So that's awesome, right? So, and then you got the agent stuff, which, based upon your research and George's and the team and our reporting, we think that's going to open up huge. I give that one a little bit more saute time on the stovetop, because we have to see the enterprise be ready.
Yeah, you're right.
Innovation side is great, but the consumption
more complicated. It's more complicated than a lot of the vendors would have you believe.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, you can't ignore that. You just got to be caveat emptor. You got to be really careful about a lot of the vendor claims. Well, there aren't a lot of companies that are building that 4D map.
The IPO drumbeat is high. We talked about that. I want to get into something that happened this week. It was obviously a big event, Black Hat, cybersecurity. It seems like with all the hubbub and all the AI frontier models and the chat GPT news, huge Black Hat. So, again, this is a community event, unlike RSA, a little bit more marketing and business. Still a lot of activity at Black Hat. So, great to see that show, and hats off to the CUBE team.
Yeah, Jackie McGuire,
John Klein, Eric
were there. A bunch of really good interviews out there.
Yeah. All right, Dave. Well, I mean, I got to say, I'm pumped for next week. It's the summer.
Yeah,
Um,
me too. And we have the MOE coming too. We have the mixture of experts. Chris Lynch is coming down. Justin Borgman from Starburst is coming in. It should be good.
yeah. All right. Well, I guess anything else on your
Did
mind?
you see? Did you see Colin Mahoney is now CEO at Record the Future?
I did. What's the scoop on
That's
that?
cool. Friend Colin Mahoney. He left AWS. Colin Mahoney, of course, was he was actually a Yankee Group analyst working for Howard Anderson, and then he went to work for Chris Lynch over at Vertica. Stayed at Vertica for a while. Became essentially the CEO of Vertica after they got sold. HP sold him. Ended up going to AWS doing database stuff, and then left maybe I want to say a year and a half, maybe it was even 2 years ago to Recorded Future. Not surprised that he's now CEO. Collins, great guy, great human being, gives back to the community. Um, really helps out young people that may not be of means in the city, inner city folks, and Colin is an awesome human. Really happy for him.
Well, not a lot of earnings news here, although Arista beat expectations, stock soaring. Like I
Oh
said, they
yeah.
on the board today on the big down in the below me and on the floor. I was giving a tour to future IPO friend of the Cube alumni was in town with his family. CEO of Next Hop, um, really great company. I mentioned that earlier. That was so it's good. He's ex Arista, so he was totally pumped. Um, yeah, just overall good stuff, Dave. I'm psyched for next week. Have a great weekend,
All
and
right, John. Thank you.
yeah,
Looking forward to seeing you next week. And thanks, everybody.
yeah. Thanks, everyone.
See you.